So Heroes has been a kind of a released thing for about 5 months now. In that time, now that it's fully exposed to the public, has your perception of it changed? Your attitude towards designing it changed?
I don't know if our perception has changed of the game. I think we're still very much building the game that we've always sort of wanted to build. We've certainly learned a lot about the game since we released it. We did a re-release of our ranked play back in August. We're still getting feedback on that. I think we have more fixes to do in that area. We're still getting continual feedback about matchmaking we want to do better with. We've had a ton of balance feedback, I think a bunch of art feedback as well. So one thing we sort of plotted in for this year was, ship the game. We had a bunch of other features we wanted to do, but right after ship the game was react to feedback. That was sort of our top priority, and we've actually spent a good chunk of the year just doing that, which has been a lot of fun. It's been, I think, very powerful for the game, and it's moving it to a better and better place.
Obviously, the focus is on these other universes, but like the Nexus universe, I don't know what you call it internally, but like the maps basically, is its own thing. And I noticed that the new map seems to be set in the same world as Raven's Hollow, right? Or Raven's Court, sorry.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Towers of Doom is thematically we're going to a place where we're saying, okay, what if the Necromancer, who is kind of the voice you're hearing commentate on your performance when you play Cursed Minds, what if that guy just had a beef with the Raven Lord? Right. And we had a lot of fun exploring that idea. A lot of the aesthetics of the map, there's industrial mining operations happening in this corner. There's all the farmland of Ravencourt over here.
Speaking of the map, actually, I got to play a few rounds on it, and it struck me that because of the recapturing forts mechanic, it suddenly felt like mid-game all the time. And then, but there's this sort of, rather than there being a really visual progress towards the end of the game with the destruction of the Nexus necessarily, is that sort of the conscious thing to kind of keep the fighting in the center of the map for an entire?
Well, we were going for a territories map, and we actually had it, as a flag capture map for a long time. And there was a lot of confusion, and you think, well, I don't understand, when do I blow up the core? And so we ended up basically turning what would have been tickets in a first-person shooter into kind of this kind of mechanic, right? So it's very similar to some first-person shooter type gameplay, but it's sort of reskinned and rebuilt with slightly different rules. So yeah, I think one thing we were definitely going for was a map here that would be asking you sometimes to be in many places at once to defend multiple locations, a map where siege heroes are constantly valuable. Not valuable up until they burn the first 2 forts down, but literally throughout the map, the siege hero could have value. If you're looking at a Zagara or a Gazlo, they've got some value here at knocking down forts again and again and again. And a map, too, where you can kind of come back no matter what. It doesn't matter if you've lost all the way up to that last hit point. If you can hold that last hit point, and you keep grabbing the altars, and you keep grabbing the boss, and you keep, you know what I mean? You can hold this game, and that felt very cool to us and very different. And that's what we're always going for, is going for battlegrounds that play in a very different way from what you've experienced before.
It felt like the importance of things like bosses was a little bit subtler as well, because because those objectives can be brought back. That
we actually had the bosses for a while actually doing traditional boss things, and they created this kind of weird victory lap, where they would go and they would just keep going around the map, and then you would add giants to it and it would just go again. And we'd have these crazy balls of death, like, oh my God, the ball of death again. After we saw this in like 6 or 7 games, like, okay, we need to do something else here. This is nuts. Like, these things are almost unstoppable, and it gets and it becomes this real homework problem for you where you've got to, oh my God, that thing's still alive. We got to go take care of it, right? It's literally blowing up everything. And so we went with this, where again it was all focused on that one objective of sort of tickets of sort of how do I capture enough of these things so that I can blast their fort. And it felt pretty cool to us in that respect. And again, different, where it's not the same rules. And that's one thing I think it's always challenging for us, and we're always trying to communicate is we're willing to change this game continually going forward. Whatever you're used to may not always be the case. We may try different things. And if they're not good, then we'll stop, right? But we're very open to the idea that this being a long-term investment for us, that we want to be working on this game for many, many years, that to invest in it creatively means to have a certain amount of courage to be willing to make changes and not to say, this is written in stone, this is all it will ever be.
To move on to Arena then, because it's an interesting balance with that, where you feel like you can make huge changes to the way the game is played between maps. So what makes Arena then a mode? Right?
Even more.
Right.
Even more insanity. So in Arena, we're looking at an environment where you can't even choose your hero. Like, you have to choose from 3 randomly given heroes we've given you. That takes you to a place where even our UI wouldn't make sense, right? And so I can't imagine queuing up in Hero League and then suddenly you're in Arena and all those choices you just made are just out the window. That would be insane. It's a mode, right? And we want to have a space like this where we can play even more aggressively with the game. So we're showing 2 Arena battlegrounds here, but in the future, they could be completely different types of things. We don't have to have, where you pick 3 heroes. It can be much more like Hearthstone Tavern Brawl, where it's like, we're going to have fun in here. And we're going to do some interesting things that we hope entertain you. And we're going to try some stuff.
That, to clarify, that pool of heroes that you select from, is that from the whole pool? Does that acknowledge the heroes you've unlocked at all?
It's everything right now.
So it's everything. So
Yeah.
it's potentially an opportunity for players to try things.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally.
Okay. What happens if you get Cho'Gall in your selection?
We have the ability to edit what is in it. It's not everything.
Right.
So, like, we don't always do Abathur in that list. Like,
Yeah.
so we can remove heroes. And we do have a random chance that all heroes on both teams are exactly the same. And so, for example, we tested a bunch of different heroes in that sense. So, like, we did test Abathur.
Yeah.
That's not so good. We did test...
What's like 5 Morales versus 5 Morales?
Yeah, well, we tested that one. That was not going to happen either. Turns out 5 Sonyas versus 5 Sonyas is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Because you want a Whirlwind in order to life leech to stay in the fight, but then the slam interrupts. So you don't want to Whirlwind too soon, and you're waiting for him to Whirlwind, but if you don't Whirlwind at some point, you need to Whirlwind because you got to get your life back. Or when the really fun one was Monk. Was Karazim versus it was some serious karate action, man. That was kung fu all over the place.
And I guess the decisions at the
just
start
going
then
nuts.
make a huge difference, right? Like how many support Karazims you have.
Yeah, and that's the decision. How many are we choosing here, right?
Yeah.
And like what's going on? And so some of these heroes, as all 10 the same, were awesome, and some were pretty dumb. So the dumb ones simply will never exist. That will not be a random option that will ever pop up.
Has Arena introduced any changes to the way that art works? Just to kind of pass it over, like.
Yeah, creatively, I think those guys took on a very unique opportunity where they're like, how do we tourniquet these really iconic maps? And they have so much they can do, so much they can play around on, a 3-lane, a 2-lane map. And the arenas are a lot more compact, and it creates this really concentrated experience where they're like, okay, we're going to do, a Sky Temple map, and we only have this much real estate. Like, you better pick your favorite landmarks and all those other things because, we don't have 3 lanes anymore, or whatever the situation is for those layouts. And those guys have risen to the challenge, and there's a lot of new things they've incorporated as well. There's these bleachers with all the people in the stands, and they're just reacting to everything, and it's really creating a level of immersion on a different level that makes arenas kind of come into their own. And you're like, awesome! There's a themed cup for every tile set, and there's all these like floating billboards and stuff showing the scores and all this, indication of what's going on between the 2 different teams. And, they had a ton of fun exploring how to make that an immersive experience within the whole arena subset of maps.
To move on to Cho'Gall, which, I mean, not to overshadow the other hero announcements, but it kind of feels like he's going to overshadow the hero announcements a little bit. What was the genesis of that idea, that single idea of the co-op hero?
Well, we wanted to do an unusual hero, every so often, and BlizzCon's often a good time to do that. We did it with Abathur in our first year, and we did Lost Vikings last year, so we were kind of like, well, it would be fun to do something kind of out there. And we've been talking about Cho'Gall for quite a while. We have multiple designs of Cho'Gall as a warlock, and he was, one player, and it's a warlock. We had different types of warlocks that you could be, and we were working on this warlock, and they were very reasonable warlocks. But he was not really that exciting, right? He was just some big hairy warlock at the end of the day. And somebody came up with this idea, so what if we did this? I think they were even joking about it. They were referencing the April Fools that happened so many years ago. It was World of Warcraft. Yeah, it was World of Warcraft.
I remember now,
Remember this, where you could play a 2-headed ogre together, and you always had to log on at the same time, and it was ridiculous. And somebody made this joke that we could do that. And then somebody else said, wait a minute. What if that's not a joke? No, I'm kidding. I don't think you are. Think about this, right? And so we had this need to do something unusual that we really wanted to sort of push boundaries again. We also had this character kind of lying around that we had some art for. I know you guys ended up redoing him, I think, a bunch of times, but we had some art lying around, and we wanted to try it out. And suddenly those 2 kind of came together into this really unusual idea. And Cho'Gall, we had many of those moments with Cho'Gall. I don't know if you guys saw
him carrying the horse.
Do you want to talk about how that happened?
Yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff to kind of add. Like Dustin's right, we had really early designs where Cho'Gall was, a singular controlled warlock, and we built it in 2012, and we were just going full steam ahead, picking all our favorite characters, putting them in the Nexus, having a great time with that high concept. And then we stopped making new heroes because the talent system emerged from a design standpoint, and the depth that added, it enabled something like Cho'Gall. And, we dropped the roster down to 10. We focused on some core heroes. We eventually started bringing all that sprint of heroes we made. They were coming back into the fold, getting talents. And when Cho'Gall came back up, the talent system was paramount in making that achievable for us, and just kind of like saying, look, you can do this 2-player crazy thing. And we're like, oh my gosh, the immersion is on a whole new level. You can, talk to your partner. You're talking through voice chat systems. the characterization of him. He's bickering, he's slapping himself, and the horse thing came around because like ogres are lovably stupid, and we had just throwing it out, like as Dustin's saying, we were just throwing ideas at the wall, and we're like, what if he's just argued with his second head and he's too dumb to figure out how to ride a horse? Like they just decided, like, you do it like this, dude. And we just threw it out there, and then one day an animator, he said, hey, check this out, and he has this beautiful orchestral score of Cho'Gall just running with the horse, and everyone's just like, this is going to win the Oscar. And it was a beautiful moment where we literally just went back to tech art. We went back to those vision holders, like, seriously, can we, like, I think we said that the whole time we made him, like, can we do that? Like, this needs to happen. This is winning.
So to clarify some points about Cho'Gall, what happens if Abathur uses his ult to clone Cho'Gall?
I don't actually remember what we decided on that. I'm pretty sure he cannot.
Okay, that would make sense.
That's where we went with
the
that.
actual real player splits into two people.
Yeah,
right. Similarly, just to clarify, basically for my benefit, like when you've unlocked Cho'Gall, can you select Cho in like a regular game without a friend there to play Gall? So it's only
must be with a friend.
So you have to be in a party.
You have to be in a party of two to play a Cho'Gall.
That makes sense, because otherwise that's like
it's really not plausible, and it's not that fun. Like we were very worried about, like, so we have to figure out how to enable this, and we were testing them, and based on the mechanics that we had, is like, I don't think I want anybody playing this with somebody they don't know. Like, I don't think that's a positive experience. You might say, I want them. Like, you don't. It's not that good. It's really meant for two people who are trying to work together.
Yeah.
We're doing everything they can to communicate with each other and are sort of committed to each other to learning this together.
Has the developing esports scene changed the way you design or balance the game at all?
It's definitely improved our balance quite a bit. Being able to watch pro players play on an esport stage, watching their picks, watching what they're doing, I think has leveled up the community. And I think it's also leveled up our understanding of what's working and not working. And so I think it's been a wonderful tool for us.